Hi everybody, it's Kim from Patriot Garden, and tonight we're going to be canning some blackberry jam. I had the pleasure of working on a farm last summer. They gifted me with about 10 quarts of blackberries that I froze. So this is part, we've run out of jam, and it's part, I've got to start emptying out the freezer so that as I'm growing and preserving food in spring and summer, I have someplace to put it. Now, jam is a very forgiving recipe. So right now I have got 10 cups of berries and I've got about 5 cups of sugar. I'm using a cup measure, not a weight. Some recipes you'll find a weight. The thing about jam is you can make your own recipe. The more sugar that you use, the faster you're going to reach your gel stage. The less sugar that you use, the longer it's going to take to reach the gel stage, and we'll talk about that later in the video. I'm also going to be adding some orange peel, grated, and I'm going to be adding some lemon juice. It will just add a little bit of extra flavor to the jam. I've washed and sterilized with hot soapy water 12 jars, just in case. It doesn't matter if I have more than I need. And I've got about 6 lids and 6 rings boiled and sterilized. A lot of people feel you need to sterilize your jars, and they'll sterilize them by baking them in the oven or putting them through the dishwasher for a cycle. I've washed mine with just hot, very hot soapy water. I'm going to be putting in jam that's about 220 degrees, and I'm going to be boiling it in a water bath canner for about 10 minutes. So I figure between all of that, my jars are going to be clean enough to put down on the shelves for long-term storage. Okay, I've got my water bath canner boiling right now. I'm going to start putting all this stuff in a pot and cooking it down. I'm going to add a little bit of water because I feel like this mixture is still a little dry and I don't want it to burn on the bottom of the pan. Now you may have noticed that I don't use pectin in my recipe. There are plenty of recipes that call for pectin. I like to use as few ingredients as possible in jam. You don't really need the pectin. The sugar's going to help it reach that gel stage. But if you want to use the pectin, there's plenty of recipes even just on the back of the box. I have used both the liquid and the powder pectin. I like the liquid better. But again, canning supplies are tough to find right now, and that pectin is going to be with the canning supplies. So if you intend on using your pectin when you see it, buy it. Okay, I'm going to start boiling this down. I'm going to watch it very carefully. Once it starts to really boil, I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit. I'm also going to watch for foam. Blackberries tend to foam a lot when you're cooking them, and you want to make sure that that doesn't boil over because you'll create quite a disaster. So check for the foam. Usually just using a metal spoon and giving it a little stir will help that foam go away. And then if there's any foam remaining when you go to jar it, you can just skim that off if you don't want that in your jars. Okay, so I'm going to let that boil, and then we're going to test it for the gel stage, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, I've done the jam test. I've done the cold plate test. I don't have a jelly thermometer. I just use the cold plate test or the sheeting test. When you grab some with a spoon and when you tip it over, the individual drops sometimes come together and they form one sheet coming off the spoon. But the cold plate test is the best. Put a plate in the freezer when you start boiling your jam. And when you think you've reached a really good temperature where the jam is starting to get thick, you put a little bit of jam on the plate. Let it cool down. You can even put it back in the freezer for a minute. And when you push it with your finger, if it creates a skin or wrinkles, the jam is ready. Okay, I'm going to ladle the jam into my jars using my funnel. I'm going to be using, I think, my pint jars because this is just for us. The half pint jars don't go very far, so I'm going to put it in pint jars. I'm going to test for headspace. The general rule of thumb is 1/4 of an inch of headspace for jams and jelly, 1/2 inch of headspace for condiments, pickles, tomatoes, and a full inch if you're doing starchy things like the beans I did the other night. So I'm going to check for 1/4 of an inch. That's the smallest notch on this tool. I'm just going to put it against the edge, and I've got a little ways to go. Perfect. I made 4 pint jars. Just made a little mess on the edge. Do not scrape down the sides of your pan. Do not scrape anything off the bottom. Whatever's loose goes into the jars. Whatever's stuck to the pan gets washed off. Okay, I'm going to wash the rims of my jars with a warm, damp cloth just to make sure there's nothing on the edge that will impede the seal. And now I'm going to put my lids and my rings on. I just realized that I had done 2 wide mouth and 2 regular mouth. I kind of use jars indiscriminately, but I didn't have any rings and lids boiled for the wide mouth, so I had to take a break and take care of that. Rings on, just finger tighten, remember, not too tight. And I still can't find my lid tool. Okay, these are just about done. The water in the water bath canner is boiling. I'm going to put these in the basket. I like to give the jars a little bit of space so that they're not touching. I'm going to put them in the water bath canner for 10 minutes. They're all finished. They're all ready to be cooled, and then I'll date them and store them. Remember, rings off for storing. Blackberry jam tends to be the seediest of all the jams. If that's not your thing, I mean, they will cook and get soft during the processing and the cooking, but there will still be seeds in your jam. And you might want to try this with like strawberries or blueberries first. If you're a first-time canner and it's your first time making jam, do not be disappointed if it doesn't set up. I'm going to wait about 24 hours before I make the decision whether this was a good batch. Even experienced canners get to that 24-hour period and the jam has not set. Sometimes it happens. We call it syrup. So thanks for sticking around, and watch my video posted tomorrow on gardening with kids. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe if this video was helpful, and we'll see you next time. Happy gardening, everybody.